Hi, I'm Jill Varvell, and you're listening to DixieCast, presented by DixieCast.com. Welcome to the DixieCast, Southern Comfort for your ears. DixieCast is a podcast where we bring you weekly anecdotes, current events, and short interviews that showcase the vibrant history, wonderful people, and culture of the American South. I'm Jill Varvell, a realtor, blogger, podcaster, and homemaker. This is the first episode of my new show, the DixieCast, and to me, this show represents a homecoming. I was born in Louisiana, and my earliest memories of the Deep South are of hearing slang like kinfolk and y'all, running barefoot through the bayous of Maringouin, eating hot fried catfish with hush puppies, and gazing at row after row of stately brick homes. While I was very young, my dad, an engineering graduate of LSU, took a job at Lockheed Martin in Northern California. So our family of 6 packed up our red Chrysler and drove from our home in New Orleans, Louisiana to Campbell, California, where I grew up, lived most of my life in the Bay Area, and raised my family. I met my husband there and worked over 20 years in the real estate industry. But California stopped feeling like home as the Santa Clara Valley gradually became the Silicon Valley. The sprawling farms and orchards of my youth were developed into soulless business parks, sprawling highways, and high-efficiency apartment complexes. Simultaneously, a new breed of power-hungry politicians implemented more invasive policies while the cultural melting pot was fractured by progressive rhetoric. So we moved to Washington State, bought a home with a few acres, and thought we'd create a new life and make new memories in the Pacific Northwest. But through time and circumstance, we learned that God had other plans for us. In the fall of 2021, while traveling to work, a vehicle crossed over 2 lanes of highway and crashed into my husband's vehicle, leaving him critically injured. By the grace of God, he survived, and on the opinions of doctors and the wrecking yard attendants, it was a miracle. With a new lease on life and a reminder of our mortality, my husband and I decided to go on a cross-country road trip through the American South where our families were from. We traveled through Oregon, Wyoming, Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas, and Tennessee. And we were pleasantly surprised by what we saw. It was a place we knew through our families and hazy childhood memories, but didn't really know for ourselves. The flyover states had the best climate, culture, food, people, and outlook on life. While Washington State was locked down with misguided monthly mandates, this other part of the country remained free and functioning. Churches met in person, restaurants remained open, and people weren't living in fear of a virus or of each other. Encouraged by the normalcy, I began earnestly searching for homes. Like the rest of the country, the housing market here was hot, and unlike the West Coast, the South was more reasonably priced. So in an unusually impulsive move for us, we bought our home sight unseen in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Now, we saw a lot of states on our trip, so how and why did we choose Northwest Arkansas, people ask us. Well, we were looking for a sustainable state where we could grow a garden and raise animals. The weather is ideal for agriculture here, and unlike other areas we had considered, like Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana, the South's weather allows for a longer growing season. While it rains frequently, averaging 49 inches a year, it's dispersed throughout the year, meaning that there isn't much of a rainy season, and it's green almost year-round. Although we get a lot of lightning with booming, rolling thunder, even during storms, it's not so cold that you can't walk outside. It's very temperate, and in the case of a natural disaster, and even in the absence of electricity, one could reasonably survive. From a financial perspective, the economy is doing quite well. Real estate is booming, construction is constant, and industry is steadily increasing. Many large companies are relocating to the area from other states. According to the Wall Street Journal and Moody's Analytics, Fayetteville and the neighboring cities in northwest Arkansas have the third best job market among metros with less than 1 million people in the nation. There's plenty of shopping and a burgeoning art scene, excellent museums like Crystal Bridges. And if you need an even bigger city, Tulsa, Oklahoma is only a couple of hours away. So why did I choose Dixieland as the name of my podcast? I spent a few weeks searching for domain names that encompass the Southern culture I was finding myself falling in love with. But I wanted a comprehensive name that not only embodied the South, but I was hoping it could embody a little piece of myself as well. Not only does Dixieland evoke the memories of my childhood, but I like the plurality of the name. I think there are many different cultures here in the South, and Dixieland allows me to explore all of them. No one really knows where the term Dixie came from, but most scholars suspect it came out of New Orleans, Louisiana, where I was born. The word Dixie likely referenced currency issued by the Citizen State Bank in the French Quarter of New Orleans, and then by other Louisiana banks. These banks issued $10 notes labeled Dix on the reverse side, which is French for 10. The French pronunciation is 10, but these notes were known as Dixies by English-speaking Southerners. The French-speaking parts of Louisiana came to be known as Dixieland, and eventually usage of the term expanded to refer to Southern states as a whole. There are many roads, places, and businesses in Arkansas using the name, and despite its non-racial origin, I was told that some may have a negative association of the word Dixie. I concluded Dixie is as much of a geographic term as much as it is a historic one. I'm of Sicilian descent. I was born in the Cajun capital of the world, only minutes from the French Quarter, and I intend to highlight the positive connotations and rich culture evoked by the term. Dixieland is another name for my home, for my memories, and the life that I'm gratefully cultivating here in Northwest Arkansas. The best part of Northwest Arkansas is the people. I've heard of Southern hospitality my whole life, but I never quite experienced it until I moved south. I have my own personal ideas as to why Southern hospitality is so prevalent here, but I'm probably going to say that for another podcast. Suffice it to say that there are an abundance of churches here and many God-fearing folks and traditional families who fill those churches. Though I've traveled in many places in the last 30 years of my life, Northwest Arkansas has some of the kindest, most polite, and most helpful people. Your neighbors aren't just your neighbors, but they're friends who want to be a part of your life. The sense of community here is strong. For example, upon arriving at our new house, we quickly needed to build a backyard fence for our German Shepherd, but our tools hadn't arrived, so my husband began digging fence post holes by hand. Our next-door neighbor, whom we hadn't even met, was observing his inefficient efforts. A few hours later, he rode over on his tractor and asked to help. In what would have taken us perhaps 2 weeks, he and my husband worked together for a couple of hours. Neighbor refused any compensation. He's just being neighborly. Similarly, in 2 months, we've met most of our neighbors. I've been invited to participate in the local women's club and have been regularly updated about weather conditions, runaway animals, and recommendations for the best local farms and food. I named this first episode of my podcast Homecoming. The idea of coming home is cherished and sentimentalized in American culture. We see it in movies, we hear about it in music. Coming home is a return to our past. It's a warm memory of the things that shape who we are. Home can be a place, a community, the scent of a long-forgotten but familiar fragrance, or even the taste of a beloved food. For me, the idea of home comprises all of those things, but most of all, coming home means a feeling of contentment and hope. Love for where you are and hope for the things to come. So I'd like to say welcome home and welcome to Dixieland's Southern comfort for your ears. Thank you for listening, and I hope you will turn in next Friday for another heaping helping of the DixieCast.